Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
And welcome to Justice Served TV. I'm serving up a little something in my Where in the World is Justice mug here. Hi, Linda Kenney Baden.
Hi, Michael Bryant. How are you on Thursday evening of a very busy week? We've, excuse me, we have embarked on our two-part episode dealing with both Jeffrey Epstein and one of his survivors, Liz Stein. So, before we get into the show, I've noticed that everybody else who does this tells people to hit the subscribe, like, share, notify when we start. Okay. And if you're on X, come on over to YouTube. If you're on X, you can also hit the like of Justice Served TV because every night there's been a new guest here that we've been bringing in.
Yeah, and if you're on X, I just say you go right down the hallway, take a left after the bathroom, and then we're right there. Just then you hit the. If you have to go back, that's fine. And some people get violent. They say mash the like button. You don't have to get violent, but just lightly touch it. Works just the same and puts us in the magical algorithm, which does who knows? I don't know what the hell it does.
We don't know.
We hear it's good. So we're kind of day two into the Jeffrey Epstein latest after I can't help myself every time I talk about what the government has released. I say development because it's a nothing burger. I don't even know what that means. I know our friend Mr. Rossi, the federal prosecutor, uses that a lot. It's a joke, and the administration should be ashamed. But anyway, having said that, we thought it'd be important to hear from some folks who couldn't be much more into the Jeffrey Epstein world, for better or worse, in most cases for worse. We want to start that process by talking to one of the survivors. This is a woman that I spoke to a couple of years ago, met her through my wife, Lisa Bryant, who is the director of the Filthy Rich first and second docuseries.
Award-winning docuseries.
Award-winning, and so we have her on standby. I'm working hard to get her. It's a crazy exclusive. I'm hoping I can make it come up in the next few minutes. But in the meantime, we have this conversation just really a few minutes ago with Liz. We had a scheduling issue. We wanted to make sure we got it to you, but we couldn't do it live. So let's do that now, and then after we hear her story, we will circle back. So, Linda, we're joined by a very special guest now, somebody who has a unique perspective on really all things Jeffrey Epstein. Liz Stein is here. Liz, a survivor of the Jeffrey Epstein world. Thank you for joining. Obviously, there have been some recent developments in the case. Before we get into that, though, give us a sense of your experience, and then we'll get into what all these new things will mean.
Sure. So I met Epstein and Maxwell while I was a student at the Fashion Institute of Technology in the early 90s. And I first met Ghislaine because she was a client at the store I was working at for my internship. She introduced me to Epstein that day, and things just kind of, hit the ground running. And I was involved with them for about a period of 3 years. And my involvement with them changed the entire trajectory of my entire life. And, I think that when media is covering these stories of high profile sex trafficking cases, we're forgetting the component of the people who are left behind by these acts. So I have, I'm now a professional in the anti-trafficking community, and I really am trying to use my story as a teaching moment for people to really understand what trafficking entails and the effects on the victims for a lifetime.
And we should make it clear that you were not a minor at the time, right? When you were approached and brought into this. Just
I was
not that that's in any way acceptable, but just it's an important element.
No, so, I was 21, but I looked like I was about 15.
Probably.
I like the fact that you use the word survivor rather than victim, because it implies that you're using your skills now to help other women. I don't know if you feel that way.
There's a trajectory, right? I work with young survivors in my day-to-day work, and there's a trajectory where you go from being a victim to a survivor to a thriver, and everyone deserves to be on that trajectory. So I use the terms interchangeably for depending on where someone is in their healing journey.
So let's talk about, you mentioned Ghislaine, who was convicted, sentenced, and you were all part of that whole process. So I want to get your take on that as well. But it was a big step removed from Jeffrey Epstein, who now we have some more, I'm so hesitant to say new information because it was crap. The government's giving us nothing. Talk first about your relationship with Ghislaine from the moment, she comes up to you. How does that unfold?
It was interesting. I really loved my job. I loved working in fashion, and we immediately connected the first time we met. She usually shopped with the personal shopper in the store, and they weren't there that day. And so we just kind of met each other and started talking. And really, it seemed we had a lot in common. We both loved fashion. We talked about our boyfriends. We talked about the problematic relationships we had with our fathers. She talked about going to prep school and how she was raised. I'm from a large family. She's from a large family. So, we see this happen with traffickers all the time. They immediately latch on to the commonalities to try to make you feel comfortable with them. And she was really good at doing that. And so when she wrapped up her purchases with me, something that I would do to give, really good service to my high-end clients was I would deliver their packages so they didn't have to carry them around Manhattan all day long. But I had this hard and fast rule where I would only deliver to hotel concierge or to a doorman to protect my safety and professionalism. But she was just really charming when I, went to deliver the packages to their hotel. They invited me to have a drink, and she introduced me to Jeffrey, and everything was normalized right then and there the first day that I met her. And that was the first time that they assaulted me. And so, something that I lived with for a very long time was thinking that these were my friends and that I had done something wrong. I didn't know that I was trafficked until Epstein was arrested in 2019. And this is part of how traffickers groom people and manipulate them emotionally. And they were excellent at doing that.
That must have been the realization. You must have been hard on yourself, I'm guessing. How could I have let this happen? Blaming yourself. Describe that.
Well, growing up, my parents were very insistent that we pay a lot of attention to our education and to our careers. So when I went to college, I was already very career focused. And I had dreams for myself. I had ambitions, things that I wanted to do in New York. And when I met Maxwell and Epstein, they made me think that they were my friends and that, they wanted to support me and help me to fulfill my dreams. They instead gave me decades of nightmares, but, they saw that vulnerability in me. They saw that I was ambitious and that I wanted to have, a really robust professional life. And they used that against me.
How did she explain her relationship with Mr. Epstein?
So in the beginning, when I first met her, I wasn't really clear if Jeffrey was her boss or if he was her boyfriend. The way that she described him to me when we were shopping together, he felt more like a boss. When I got to the hotel to drop off the packages that night, the concierge invited me into the bar, and she introduced me to Jeffrey. And, when you look back, right, when you remember, you think, my God, how could I have been so foolish? But they were masters at manipulation, really, masters at manipulation, gaslighting, and mind control.
There's a whole concept now of coercive control that that, as you know, tell us about that, because I have a partner who just filed a lawsuit against somebody who was a famous sports agent on the whole issue of court control.
Coercion can be really subtle. It can, for me, it was, if you don't do this, we're gonna take this away from you. And so it would be, for me, things like offering to go to events with famous people, and it would depend on my performance whether they would revoke that from me or grant me permission to do that. Other things that they did as ways to coerce my behavior was they dangled this carrot of me being in the executive training program for the Limited, which was the company that I was working for at the time. And, the constant emotional back and forth that they used on that as a way to coerce and manipulate me was really devastating to me, to finally in the end find out that they had no plans whatsoever to actually help me in my career, but we're just using these carrots as methods of coercing me to do the other things that they wanted me to do.
And how did you get out? How did it end?
I was trying to get away from them from the first meeting, and they really pursued me. I changed jobs, I changed apartments, I changed cities, I changed states, and they found me no matter where I went. And the last straw, I guess, the way that I finally got away from them was I had moved outside of New York and was trying to get away from them, and thought the only way I could get away was if I hurt myself in a car accident. And so I hurt myself in a car accident, and I moved back home with my family. And when I felt well enough, I decided to move to Philadelphia because I had dreams of going to law school when I met Epstein and Maxwell. And so I moved back to Philadelphia to apply to law school and hopefully attend law school. And they found me again. And that was more than I could handle. And I had a nervous breakdown. And I think at that point, it was no longer a fun game for them to pursue me. And that's ultimately how I got away.
Wow. Traumatic. And I'm sorry, we don't mean to re-traumatize you with going through some of this stuff, but I think for our folks, it's important to understand where you were in the mix, because when we hear from you about these latest issues, it means so much more. So let's talk about that. You were following and were part of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. You saw some measure of justice with her conviction and incarceration. Are you surprised that she's still alive in prison?
No.
Okay.
No.
So let's talk about the very unsatisfying, I would think, pursuit of Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, he's arrested. That's great. You think we're on our way to justice. And then he dies. I think he was killed. And now we have this latest, disclosure from the Department of Justice and the FBI that we've looked it over. We've seen all the video. Here's this 10 hours I'm going to share with you, which is like watching paint dry and about as important. And then, by the way, there's no list. Give me your take on all of this.
Well, I certainly do not want to contribute to any conspiracy theories, but I will tell you what my personal experience was. I think that Epstein and Maxwell were way too smart to actually keep any physical list anywhere. However, I want to draw people's attention to this statement from the statement that was released. It says, consistent with prior disclosures, this review confirmed Epstein harmed over 1,000 victims. I want you to think about that. They are saying in this that there were over 1,000 victims. And while I know that some of Epstein's victims were only trafficked to Epstein, I also know and can tell you personally that many of us were trafficked to other men that Epstein was friends with. And while there may not be a physical list, I think that people need to pay attention to what Epstein's friendships were. And I find it very unsettling that people are willing to forget that this was an international sex trafficking operation. And when you have a sex trafficking operation, you have the pimp, you have the buyer or the John, the men who are buying the sex or receiving the services, and you have the victims. We're talking about the pimps, we're talking about Maxwell and Epstein, right? And we've acknowledged to some little extent the victims, although really not the impact that it had on the lives of the victims. But the piece that we're missing, and the piece that we miss across the board in all sex trafficking cases, is the demand. Who are the buyers? Who are the men? And we're not naming the men in this case, because to name these men would be naming the most powerful men in industry, government. What would it look like if these men were held accountable for their actions? Several of these men who had associations with Epstein have been accused of other sexual crimes and haven't been held accountable in any real way for those. And it's maddening as a survivor to hear that, okay, it's done and it's over with. We tried someone, she's in jail, it's over. This didn't just happen on the back of Ghislaine Maxwell. There were people who enabled this behavior, and there were people who participated in it, and we're not talking about that. Why aren't we talking about that?
Well,
let me ask you, when you talk about these powerful folks, did you know either at the time or afterwards that you were trafficked to some of these high-powered people that you referenced?
Yes.
Have you named them somewhere? No. Are you afraid to?
That's an interesting question. Am I afraid to speak up? No, I'm not afraid to speak up. However, I don't feel like it would be productive in any way to my life to be picked apart and dragged through the mud by people who weren't there, giving their 2 cents on what did or did not happen to me. I lost decades of my life because I was trafficked. And my story is not unique just because it involved Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. This is what happens to the lives of trafficking survivors.
Do you feel that you can't be protected also if you named anyone?
Sure.
That's what's coming through to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be quite honest, if there was some better good that could be done by me naming names, I might consider it, but I've lost enough. And I'm when I say that I've lost enough, I've also worked really hard to rebuild my life. And I have a life that is joyful and fulfilling and full of love. And I know what happened. I don't need to prove that to anyone else.
That's obviously a very healthy attitude. I'm assuming you've worked on that, and now you're helping others with those same kinds of challenges, right?
Yeah. If you talked to me 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you would see a very different person and hear very different things coming out of my mouth. But the one thing that I always knew about myself was that I was stronger than their darkness. My light was stronger than their darkness. And it may have taken me decades to find myself again and prove that, but I have. And that's an important piece of this story too.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little more about what you're doing now and things to come. But one last little question on this revelation from the Department of Justice. Is it done? I mean, they seem to be putting a bow on it and expecting everybody to move on. What do you think?
I think that there has been, heat recently between tweets that people have made and just pressure from people in the government to kind of get some answers on this. And I think that it's awfully convenient that an administration that was so headstrong in uncovering the truths in all of this is so willing to just dismiss it all of a sudden. I think that that's really unfortunate, and I think that that's something that people really need to think about. Why is this administration so willing to just wrap this up without real answers?
Liz, did anyone talk to you before they came out with that statement that we all heard that this is done? Goodbye,
Yeah.
Yeah, not surprising, I'm guessing.
Not surprising.
Not at all.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So give us the update, what you're doing now, how can people reach out if they need what you provide, and what can we look for in the future from you?
Sure. So I really, I'm enjoying being a part of the national anti-trafficking movement. I work with young survivors so they can find their voice and find advocacy. I also do speaking engagements. I train across the country on various topics about human trafficking. And I really enjoy the work. I think that these are conversations that we need to have. These are conversations that we need to have in the media, right? Like, this could be a real teaching moment in our society. The Epstein case, R. Kelly, P. Diddy, Weinstein, all of these high profile cases, we're missing a moment, I feel, in society where we could start to change the narrative. And so anything that I can do to push that forward, I'm glad to do.
Wow. You're just so impressive.
Let me share this too. We talked about a couple of years ago, whenever the sentencing was, we were trying to put that in a time frame, but a couple of years ago. And as passionate and brave as you were then, I even see a difference 2 years later. I mean, it's amazing. And
my life's really changed.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy for you. You should be so proud of the work you're doing, both on yourself and to help others. And we really appreciate you having the opportunity to come on and tell us, in light of what we have seen from the government, what it really means for somebody in a very special position.
Thank you both. I appreciate having the opportunity.
Thank you, Liz. It just was really informative and just hard. Well, Michael, everyone's affected. Sui Generis wants to thank us for this. Is eye-opening, at least. It really is. I mean, when we were listening to her today, and there were certain questions, obviously, that you all probably want to know. You all probably want to know what she thinks of whether or not Jeffrey Epstein was killed. You probably want to know who she thinks did it. We were not going to go there with her. Okay, that's what this interview was about. Just so you all know.
Yep. But man, what a powerful story, and so great to see her getting better and helping others get better. But we're not done with our kind of deep dive into what we've learned as it relates to Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, as we all know, it's all over now. It's done. There's no list. Nobody else to worry about. Nobody else to arrest. Ridiculous. But we think it's important to keep the story alive. And other than survivors like Liz, and I've talked to a number of them, there's really no one else that is more embedded in this story, been there from the beginning, has tracked the lives and the challenges of these survivors than one person that I'm very familiar with. But before we bring her on, let me just play a little something that will refresh recollection about her involvement in this particular endeavor. I think you might remember this.
The disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein is dead.
Did he kill himself? Was he killed?
There was something happening here that was bigger than just Jeffrey Epstein.
He was known as this Gatsby-like figure of mystery.
He was stunningly rich. He had a $20 million house, his own private island in the Caribbean.
He has a nickname, the Pedophile Island.
And
2005, the Palm Beach Police Department received reports of young women going to and from his residence.
There was an ever revolving door of girls.
Who else was underage?
All of them. Those girls brought other girls too.
It's a trade, and it goes on and on and on.
This case would put him in prison the rest of his life.
Have you ever solicited a minor for prostitution?
I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Somehow his lawyers had worked out a deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
It was more evidence of the fact he was powerful and he could fix when everything came up.
This case was one of the worst failures of the criminal justice system.
There was no way that anybody could look at this and think this was okay.
There are enough survivors that refuse to give up.
I want justice.
He's dead, but he did not act alone. None of them have been held accountable.
Start digging into his life, pulling out this spider web of people.
This is the tip of a much bigger iceberg.
Take them down. Take everybody down.
The monsters are still out there. You took our freedom, now we're going to take yours.
Boy,
Wow.
I forgot that at the end there you see Virginia Giuffre,
Right,
who
who-
of course is no longer with us.
Right.
So yeah, anybody who hasn't seen that, for both of you who haven't seen that series, circle back and see it again if you haven't.
Right.
And obviously the Ghislaine Maxwell, the monster behind the monster, which was the follow-up to that.
Right.
So
Right. And we've been devoting our days or 2 days on this because when you see what Mark Epstein had to say last night and you see what the victims have to say today, and we're going to talk to Lisa Bryant, you're going to understand why we feel as lawyers, as people, that Jeffrey Epstein was silenced, that he did not silence himself. So.
Yeah. So I worked hard on this get, as we say in the business. I was able to bring my lovely bride, Lisa Bryant, into the mix. Hello there. How are you?
Hi, from the next room.
Yes. I want
Hi,
to tell a
Linda.
story.
Hi, Lisa. Do you have a co-host, Domino? Is Domino?
Is Domino helping? out?
Domino is sleeping right now, but
Yeah, that won't
we'll
last.
see how it goes.
So let me tell this story because I think it's important for people to understand how embedded you were with this story. So, and for those I've told it to before, apologize, but it's a great story. Everybody knows what Life 360 is. It's that app on your phone that allows you to track and monitor family members. So that little island you saw in the trailer from Netflix, what's it called again? Little St. James? Was that what it was called? His island, the one he owned?
Yeah, just you fly into the Virgin or St.
Right,
Thomas.
so St. Thomas, and then it's
Little
so he
St.
owns this
James.
island. So she goes there to check him out, check out the island.
I mean, Lisa goes there,
Lisa,
right.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the she.
Twice.
And so, yeah, twice. And this is, remember, this is not just when he's still alive, right? He's still out, free, you know? And so she goes there by herself, meets a cameraman, whatever. So they're at a hotel that's just off the coast or on the coast, the island, just a little boat ride, what, like 10-minute boat ride? 15 minutes across the harbor there to get to that island.
Mhm.
And so I'm tracking her, you know, it's like 2 a.m. I just want to make sure, you know, she checks in. And her locator comes up like in the middle of this jungle area, not at the hotel where she's supposed to be. So I'm, of course, freaking out a little bit. And you know, Lisa's one of these people that if our son or daughter want to call at 4 a.m, she answers. I mean, it's everybody else might be screened out, but they're getting through. And so at a certain point, I guess I'll call. And he goes right to voicemail. So I'm like, you know, what is going on? And I'm freaking out. And, you know, the story ends better than it was for me that night because I finally get a hold of her in the morning. Oh, yeah, I just turned off my phone and went to sleep. Well, thanks a lot for that. And she was fine. Obviously, Life 360 and these location software, they're not perfect. So
We
she was
need Mike
nearby.
Easter. We need Mike
We need
Easter
Mike
on the
Easter to
data.
track the cell phone locator.
Right.
Anyway, so that was one of the many moments, and I saw in that trailer too another piece of video I forgot about, and that's where you were outside his place in New York, right? You're just out there.
Correct.
You're staking his place out, and so you have video of him exiting, and I don't with a
Yes.
girl, right?
With a girl in a fur coat. She probably was in her early 30s, maybe late 20s, but definitely she was someone, you know, a good friend. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very interesting
there's
what
more
Lisa.
behind that.
Very interesting what Lisa does. That just brings up to me Turtle Boy, right? Lisa is outside his place, right? If you were in Massachusetts, Norfolk County, Lisa would have been arrested
That's right.
for intimidation instead of for proper journalism, what she was doing.
Yep, you're right. You're right. So let's talk about this latest development, which we've covered with both Mr. Epstein's brother, Mr. Epstein, and also with Liz. What's your initial thought on the government suggesting, first, there is no list?
Well, I'm going to give my overall reaction because there was really, I think, 3 or maybe even 4 main takeaways or points. I think it just was a failed attempt to shut down the public that really backfired. It re-traumatizes the victims, gives no real answers, and really just angers the public that really has this insatiable appetite and right to know about this story. I think it's going to fuel and already is fueling, more fire, more conspiracy theories, or just the need for more answers. It just, makes it look suspicious. I think that's really my take in a nutshell. I kind of call BS on it. Having done, I want to back up a little bit because, like you started to say, when I started doing this, working on that series, which aired in 2020, I believe. Now I can't believe it's been that long. I started working on it in November of 2018 when he was still very much alive. Still trafficking girls to his island, even though he claimed, and they'd like to, the government would like you to believe that, oh no, that stopped after he got out of jail in 2008. Remember, he had that slap on the wrist where he left jail every day to go to his office and have sex with girls and then go back to jail at night, and then got out early for doing so. But, I tried to talk to him. I staked out his Florida home when I knew it was there, staked out the New York home. We did get those photos. I did actually knock on the door, or actually rang the buzzer to the gate at his Florida house, which is very, infamous now. Actually, it's gone, been knocked down. But rang the buzzer. I knew he was there because we tracked his plane, and there's a lot of help I had. But we were tracking his plane, seeing when he was landed, because we wanted to do, hey Jeffrey, how are you? Right in his face. Any girls inside? But rang the buzzer. The doorman said he wasn't there. I said, oh, I'll just wait. Are you sure he's not there? I thought I saw him come in. Anyway, that was all like 8 months before, he was arrested. But I'll just say this was the hardest story, as you can imagine, ever, for many reasons. To get anyone to talk, particularly when he was alive, it did become easier, after what happened. But we had already delivered our first rough cut, and what we had, mostly after calling literally everybody in the black book, everybody on any list of any kind that we could find, and never heard of him. I don't know him, never met him. I must be a mistake. No, I would never consider doing any of it. Might have met him once at a party. I'm just in that photo because he photobombed me, whatever. I mean, every excuse. And, I met with a number of survivors, that were just afraid, talked to a number that would think about it. We ended up in our first hour, was a 4-part series with the first cut these into the network. We had one girl on camera, one girl who was in silhouette, and we had, I can't remember if we had the Palm Beach police chief in, or we just had to use his deposition because I hadn't convinced him yet that he should do it, because he was also worried about how he was going to be portrayed. So it was kind of crazy, very stressful, and also gut wrenching to learn these details. But all that to say, then fast forward to July. I'm at the movie theater with you, Michael. You remember I got the call as we were walking out of the movie theater from private investigator Mike Fiston, who worked with Brad Edwards, the main attorney who was chasing him for all these years. Said, Lisa, did you hear Epstein got arrested at Teterboro? I'm like, what? Oh my God. Everything changed. We started over, was kind of, had this powwow. I think we're like on a Friday night or something, and had to just really start over. But the the good thing is it did open up. More of the survivors felt comfortable in talking. The girl in silhouette said she would go reshoot her on camera. So people did start to talk about it, but it's still most people, who were a friend or potentially a co-conspirator, or certainly someone who might have partaken in some of the activities, still wanted nothing to do with it. So it was, it was very difficult. And
so on the video, and to that point, Liz, she already right now she's not willing to talk about some of the folks she was with, the powerful, because she's afraid of that. So that cloud hangs over this story still. But what about?
Let me say something about Liz though before you get into that, because I have to say I've stayed in touch with several survivors, Liz being one of them, and I am just so proud of her. I think she is so strong and so impressive and has really just been through hell and back. But she's way on the other side, and many of the survivors, as we know, we can talk about Virginia maybe a little bit later. We can talk about her now. I was invited to her memorial, and it was very lovely and moving and emotional. But there's survivors that can make it. They can make it through a little bit, and it's always, even Liz, she's still a work in progress and has to stay in therapy or whatever. But some aren't as lucky. There's been a number of suicides among the survivors, drug overdoses. But there also are, many that have come through and, even though their lives have been, damaged forever. But I just wanted to, thank Liz for her, candor, her willingness to share. And she's an educator now, and she's a good friend. And she really did a great job.
She's amazing. And I'm afraid that there are far more that have done far less well after the fact than she. I don't think she's typical.
It took her a very long time to get there, though, and
she's still scared, Lisa. She's still petrified about, and we stayed away from the two questions, and these are the questions Mizzou Mom brings up. What year is this? I've often wondered about the relationship with Lex Wexner and the Limited, a learner, VSL. She mentioned working for the Limited. They're still scared. I mean, they're still scared out there
because of names like Les Wexner and all these people on. Let's talk about the list. That there is no list. Liz is correct. They aren't stupid enough to have a list. I mean, when we think of a list, we think of like a piece of paper that's going to have Jeffrey Epstein's list, and Epstein, each time he knocks one off, he's going to write down whatever that's. No, but the list, really, you can compile your own list based on information that's already been released, because some people in the Black Book, the very lengthy Black Book, are 100% involved, right? Not everybody, most not, probably, because it's, I don't know how there's.
How about the plane? How about the plane
500
travel?
The flight logs. A lot of those people are either, a lot of them are victims, survivors. A lot of them are people who are complicit, who are helping out. We didn't talk, we'll have to talk a little bit about that. But yeah, a lot of those people on that in the flight logs are guilty of something, and something not good, generally speaking. So you could pull out some, I have a little bit more knowledge probably than the general public, just because I've been, following this for so long. But, without hardcore proof, such as a sex tape showing them actually doing something, it's very, very difficult, as you guys know, to prosecute people for, sex trafficking. And people are scared to death to come forward, even if they did have some proof. And the government's not going to give you the proof if they have it, which they might in certain cases. Although I do have some sort of tips that Ghislaine is, looking to get out a little earlier than 20 years. And perhaps finally she might be willing to name a couple of people. I don't know that, I don't believe it's done. I think there's a little bit going on in the FBI. They can't tell you if they're, investigating someone, let alone who that person might be. But
let me ask you about the video, because you mentioned, that there's no smoking gun in the form of video. But anybody who believes there aren't videos from those houses, from those locations, and that everything was just child porn that was downloaded by Jeffrey Epstein, and therefore the government is not going to share that, is, I'm sorry, not bright. Where's all that stuff?
Well, there's 100%. There's definitely video, and even Pam Bondi acknowledged she called everything child porn. Well, I think that is 100% not true. All the, well, not every survivor, many of the survivors that I spoke with, they all have seen cameras in multiple houses, especially ones who have been to many houses. The Florida situation with just the high school girls, those girls were mainly limited to Florida, with the exception of maybe Virginia. And very few weren't just in high school that just stayed in Florida. But they saw cameras, and that was like a threat held over their head too, that they had cameras, and so we do know. I think I will say part of the issue could be that it's pixelated, and it's hard to 100% prove who might be in that video, but I don't really believe that either. But that's also something that law enforcement has said is because I think how is there not footage, right? And maybe Ghislaine Maxwell has her own copy buried somewhere else. She knows where the bones are buried. So let's hope she does come forward, because I think there are so many people, as we know, thousands of victims. Let's say there's only 200 Johns, maybe, or that's a lot of people. So they need to be held accountable, and hopefully, I think the public keeping this going puts pressure, certainly, to find answers. It also can spin out of control a little bit with some wild, theories. But I think after some of these people are older, and after certain unnamed individuals pass, which might not be that long, I think we're going to see some more activity and more names. And these people unfortunately won't be prosecuted, but because they're very powerful. But I do think it will open up the door to some more answers that people have been looking for.
But Lisa, I mean, it just seems to me that talking to her, she felt that Liz, she felt she couldn't be protected. I don't know anyone who felt they could be protected. Michael Bryant and I, we're just like people off the street. We think that he was offed, right? We think he was silenced. And with this culmination of no video, no this, no that, no list, no checking the cells. So what is a normal person, survivor, who's trying to rehab their life and wants to see at least some justice? Even Ghislaine Maxwell, what does she think? I mean, has she ever said she's remorseful, or does this send a message to her, you better keep your mouth shut because same thing could happen to you?
Well, that's a good point. I think people have wondered why. I mean, what's in it for her other than her own threats against her life if she does mention people? At one time we thought she was gonna say some things about Prince Andrew, but she's really protected him, and anyway, I don't, it's a tricky thing, and we'll see what happens with her. But I have heard that she may try to, once the administration changes hands, come forward and speak a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, again, that's pure, I don't know if it's speculation. It's some sources, but who knows, right? People, it's hard to say. I don't want to go down a conspiratorial rabbit hole, but it's kind of what I'm hearing in my own rabbit holes, which are sometimes different than others.
But who's behind Jeffrey Epstein? Who's behind him? Who was the money people behind him? They got him the island. They got him the plane.
Lex Wexner. Lex Wexner was his first and only client initially when he started his own business. Remember, he worked at Bear Stearns. After he kind of got fired from Bear Stearns, he started his own company, Intercontinental Assets Group or something. And it was very conspicuous because Les Wexner was his only client initially, and he would only then take clients that had at least $1 million. In 1982, he started to work. He represented Adnan Khashoggi. There's long been speculation that he might have been not necessarily an informant for the CIA, but working, along with the CIA, helping provide some information. I mean, these are big, scary, powerful people. He had this passport from Austria that was discovered in 2019 in his home, but it was from 1982 when he was, and it said his residence was Saudi Arabia and had a fake name, and that's when he was working with Adnan Khashoggi. Was he helping, broker arms deals and doing that undercover with the CIA? I don't know. But it's an interesting thing to think about. But I don't know what your original question was. I kind of went on a sidebar.
Let me hit some of the questions that our folks have here, and especially this one relating to Ghislaine Maxwell, because you were all involved in that as well. I remember the day of that verdict, because it was federal court, so no cameras. It was New York, no cameras, and I think you were in the courtroom and you came basically running out and were announcing the verdict before other people were getting it. So this question from Lady Die 2, I thought they used the list in Ghislaine's trial. So what were they? Because I've seen posts, people like, well, if there's no list, why is Ghislaine Maxwell still in prison? So explain in that trial what they used and why it's not the list.
Well, we had 4 victims / survivors who were underage who testified. There was no list presented in trial, no. Right. But there were 4 women who were underage when they were abused, and she was involved in either setting up the grooming, and there was a lot of proof. Very strong, brave women, 2 of whom used let's see, Annie Farmer used her name, but anyway, it's just the list is something that you have to kind of put together yourself, I think, from various court reports. A lot of the names are redacted. A lot of that is redaction from court documents is to protect the victims, but it also there's protecting some Johns, I would bet. I think in some of them they even admitted, because one was fighting at the end when these papers were released. They even said, this John had been fighting and I think he successfully won. Surprise, to get his name, his name redacted. But you could put together a list of names. I mean, you can look through and see,
but it wasn't
just
a matter of in the trial. It wasn't a factor. So for those that are concerned that, hey, there is no list, therefore that's a get out of jail free card. Wrong. And we heard Liz talk about she guesstimated, or she had compiled what she said was 1,000 victims / survivors. What's your take on that?
That's what in the DOJ statement. That's what they say.
Yeah,
actually, when you call.
In fact, she read part of that. That's where she read that. I'm sorry. That's what she read.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that number? And is that just pulled out of the rear ends or what?
No, I think it's true. There's at least
it maybe too small. Right?
Maybe too small. It may be too small. Who knows? I mean, this went on for 30 years, right? So there was really 3 stages of his sex trafficking operation and Ghislaine Maxwell's part in it. It was really only in 2.5 sections of it, really, because in the early 90s, they had a much different, she was really out there. They presented themselves as a couple. They would go to, there's a well-known story about going to Interlochen summer camp where one of the survivors, might have been one who testified, was a camper there. And she was even grooming, they were grooming really the mother. They, oh, your daughter has so much promise. So the grooming factor with Ghislaine and Jeffrey, even working on the parents to gain their trust, and I can really help, achieve, the dreams. And, they targeted these people that clearly had nothing. And then fast forward to the early 2000s. That's when the high school thing kicked into gear. She and Jeffrey were kind of a couple earlier. They broke up. She, started dating, and but she was still very much, in his debt, really. I think he held things over her. She kind of hunkered down on the island while he started this Florida thing, and these high school girls started to recruit each other. I mean, it's the craziest thing. I think that's the fascination and it's so shocking. Because, there's a lot of sex trafficking. Diddy's thing, there's nothing grosser in the world than Diddy's. Blah, so gross. But Epstein's, just the scope and the scale, the people involved, and the methods used. And, it's crazy that the high school girls in recruiting themselves, but that, the women are, that they targeted, had a way of just, they're manipulated, and they're manipulating their friends. They're so young, they can't make these decisions.
And there were, all of them were in, poor straits, so to do $200 to come give a guy a massage is like, sign me up.
Yeah, and the whole massage thing, to someone like that, probably never even had a massage. It seemed kind of intriguing, and this rich guy, and he's kind of handsome at that, at time. He was kind of now it makes you want to throw up, but
That's not cute, right?
there were a couple of high schools, but one of our, survivors told us, and I remember being stunned by her soundbite. I said, "How many women from your high school do you think were recruited?" First I asked her how many because she recruited people, but they all recruited people, so not all, everyone, but a lot of, especially the high school girls, the underage girls. I said, "How many people do you think from your high school, gave massages and went over to Epstein's place?" And she said, "Oh, 200 easy." And I was like floored. And I put that soundbite in our cut to the network. They made me take it out because they didn't believe it. I believe it.
I absolutely believe it.
Well, I 100% believe it now. I mean, I believed it then, but I think they thought the public was going to not get it or believe it. But look what we know now. And I look back and I'm like, damn, I wish we could, had been able to keep that. But that's how.
Good call, Netflix.
Now
Good job.
They say, hey, that's really too low. Linda,
right, exactly.
I love this name. Linda says, "I blame the CIA totally." Any indication of the CIA involved in this, Lisa?
It's long been rumored. There's even a document that says something about this. I forget the phrase. CIA, but something indicating possible involvement with the CIA on a government document. So,
right.
But they just won't explain any of that because they're gonna look bad. And who are they covering up for? I mean, we know there's politicians involved.
Issue, right.
We do know that there's politicians involved. We know that there's CEOs and attorneys and all kinds of people. I mean, who are these people, right? That's like, as Liz was saying, we need to know.
I have to tell you, Lisa. I have to tell you this. We got attacked today by somebody who said, "Keep politics out of your shows," but you can't because this spanned 2 administrations, right? Yeah. It's not, and various people, Democrat, Republican. So we're not attacking. We're not talking about politicians. We're talking about
Bill Clinton was on the island. Bill Clinton was on the island. Virginia Giuffre was there and had lunch with him and said he was the nicest guy. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
so
wow.
nobody's really, saying, I don't have any reason to think like Clinton was. Who knows though? He was on the plane. He's on the flight log. So it's very
any political connection
difficult.
is an aside. It's it may be motivating investigations or lack thereof, but this is not a political show. I have a question for you. This I think was to Liz, but we did that pre-recorded, but you may know from your conversations with her. The question was from Brooklyn, which she interviewed by the FBI. Do you know if they ever talked to her?
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did either, based on what she told us about other stuff. I don't think she was ever talked to.
She, like many, felt like she wasn't going to be believed. She initially, wasn't believed, really, wasn't awarded money in the compensation fund. I think she did eventually get a settlement, but not, like the others. It's complicated if you don't have proof, as in some sort of email from them or her, or one of the people that is known to have worked with them. It's very difficult to move forward with a case.
So let me ask you this, Lisa. This is one person, Jeffrey Epstein, right? We know that sex trafficking, and we know that hitting on young people and using young people and this coercive control, it just can't be limited to Jeffrey Epstein. When you were investigating this, did you investigate, or were you able to find out or see that this was a huge worldwide problem, not limited to Epstein?
Oh, just overall, yes. I mean, I learned so much more. I think there's such a misunderstanding about sex trafficking. It's a very complex issue. It's often misunderstood due to really a lack of awareness, and also like media portrayals that just aren't accurate, and that really just perpetuates victim blaming, I think, and shaming. They don't understand consent. They don't understand, that a child can't give consent. And even honestly, when you're 19, maybe you might be of age, your brain isn't formed. You're not really an adult. I think it's 25 is kind of when you're frontal cortex is, formed really enough to be considered an adult. But I mean, to make adult decisions. I think not understanding grooming and all that, it just, there's so much sex trafficking. But I think people also tend to think that sex traffickers, they pull you out of an alleyway at night and they, kidnap you and then take you and tie you up. And, there's just a total, misconception of what sex trafficking is. Sex trafficking can be someone who looks like Ghislaine Maxwell, who is, she was, certainly in a higher class, or, she was wealthy, she was pretty, she was nice, but yet she's a sex trafficker. She's not, and female sex traffickers, I think there's 5% of all trafficking, or of all sex traffickers are women. It's a really really low number. So, someone like Ghislaine, it gives the victims more opportunity to relax and let their guard down. So it was very easily for her to manipulate, and the way she presented herself to groom, people so successfully, more so than him.
Yeah. Wow. Explain to us the concept of grooming, because this has come up in a lot of different cases, and one we're covering in a different state involving a police officer.
Well, I think the first step really is, and I'm not, going to claim I'm an expert in really anything, but I'll give you my take on what I learned for sure, is the first step really is spotting a vulnerable victim, someone who's financially disadvantaged, or maybe perhaps already had some sexual trauma in their past. I think sexual predators like Epstein and Maxwell, they have an eye for picking out someone who is in need of something, and they identify that need, and then they just exploit it. And if you pair a teenage girl with, some brilliant narcissistic billionaire, they're, like I said, their brain is not equipped to understand or even react. And you also, when someone actually is touched, many of the, women in the series say, they just froze, like they're so stunned, they don't know. Like, there's this one survivor who, she goes, the classic thing for these underage girls was, somebody recruited them from either school or from the mall, and then they couldn't even drive, would have somebody pick them up. Some were as young as like 14, 15, couldn't drive, in a cab, or have them picked up by the driver to come there to give the massage. Then another young girl, not much older than them, would walk them up the stairs and take them up to the massage room. And then if this is their first time, like they don't even know, and they say, okay, now Jeff, you have to take your clothes off. So at least go down to your, bra and underwear, but you'll get maybe $300 if you take your bra off. And this one was like, I have to take my bra off? And she's like, yeah, you do that. And she's like, that's how it works in massage, and so, these other women who've been kind of convinced, because they're getting money, they're getting $200 to bring the girl who's getting either $200 or $300 to give the massage that then turns sexual. So it's all.
I don't want to interrupt, but it's like a pyramid scheme. You've got, these folks who they kind of take themselves out of the actual hands-on massage to take a smaller cut, but that's more palatable for them to bring in others who will do the dirty work, and they still get their cut off the top. It's disgusting.
Well, okay, but they're victims too. Honestly, a lot of them, and almost all of the, all these other, co-conspirators, the other recruiters, most all of them are victims too. They're, Ghislaine Maxwell claimed she was, I think at the trial, that she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. That was part of, the defense. And in some ways, I hate to even really say that because we know what she's done, but it's probably true. He held a lot of things over her head. She knew everything. She could never really escape. She wanted out of it after that high school age, but then she still had, I think, so many debts to pay with him, or he just said, you can, or I'll turn you in, or I'll tell you, whatever. Who knows what threats, she received, but she was still kind of she was a helicopter pilot, which is kind of interesting. She would helicopter the girls from, not all the time, but she liked to fly a helicopter and she had her license. She would meet some of the girls in St. Thomas and then fly them from there in her helicopter over to the little island. And I think enjoyed that part of it because she loved to fly her helicopter. But that was kind of an interesting sidebar.
Well, this has been fascinating.
It's a lot.
It's fascinating, but I'll tell you what, the more you talk, the more it convinces me that there's no way Jeffrey Epstein at 6:31 or 6:32 in the morning in August of 2019 killed himself in the Metropolitan Correction Institution. No way.
No,
I agree.
Not a chance.
Yeah, I have to say that now. Initially, I was leaning like, okay, I'm going to try to, he knew his life was over. He took his own life. I'm trying to, take this at face value. And we presented both sides, of course, in the docuseries. But now I have to say I'm a little bit more that way because I found your interview with his brother, Mark, fascinating yesterday. That was a great get. He, all the information as a family member, he wasn't given. No 911 call. Oh, that disappeared too, along with the other 2 cameras, along with the minute of video that's missing out of 10 hours that took 6 years to get to begin with, that you can't see anything except for maybe somebody who might be wearing a jumpsuit way in the distance, slowed down at this speed. I mean, they really think the American people are stupid. I just don't understand, I just don't get it. So I think anybody following this case, I think everybody following this case would actually need, even more so now, to see Epstein actually committing suicide in a video to believe it.
And even that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure at this point because of
AI.
Because of AI. But we posted on our website all the things that Mark is seeking now. I mean, there's a lot more, but
and it's just such common sense stuff. It's amazing that he never got this stuff as the family member.
The only.
Yeah. So this is not over. That's my prediction. This is not over.
I agree with you.
Well, Ms. Bryant, thank you so much for stopping by to help us dig into this.
Welcome,
and for those,
Mr. Bryant.
So for those who haven't seen Filthy Rich or The Monster Behind the Monster on Netflix, well worth the
it's
time.
called Filthy Rich. It's called Ghislaine Maxwell Filthy Rich.
Oh,
Monster
okay.
Behind the Monster was in the trailer. That's in the trailer.
Oh, I like that so much better. I like Monster Behind the Monster.
Joey Kane has a new
that was a great soundbite. Yeah.
Joey Kane has a new favorite. Brian, it's Lisa. Lisa,
wait a minute.
Would you consider trying to? I mean, she's in federal lockup, but would you consider trying to get an interview with Ghislaine Maxwell?
I've tried. I have a story about Ghislaine. I tried, but I was told by her family members that me personally and Netflix are really the reason she's behind bars. Because she kind of was able to fly under the radar until he died, really. And then, when the documentary came out, everybody around the world saw it, and she, exploded. So it was our fault for, putting her name out there.
You outed her.
We outed her. And so they would never, ever in a million years give me an interview. So it was my fault.
Yeah, right.
See that everyone loves Lisa. Michael, they say you're a lucky man. And
well, I see my replacement.
There you go. And Domino's been so good. I'm going to show you Domino. He's all curled up right there.
Wow, Domino and Lisa need a baby.
He's overgrown that forever ago. That was his baby little thing, and he likes it better than the bigger one. So
Domino and Lisa need a baby. Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe things have changed. I mean, maybe now that Mr. Epstein is no longer with us, and we're trying to suss out actually what happened, and we're trying to get the names. We want to get the names of those people on those tier. Michael and I are committed to doing that, and maybe you could help us do that, Lisa.
Oh, you mean yes, you didn't really clarify because that was last night, but I did want to mention, repeat what you're saying is that, Mark Epstein said there are 2 inmates, inmate 1 and 2, who were never named, and
that's
they
the guard.
Knocked him off.
Two guards, right. And then there's also somebody in a hoodie. Somebody asked us who's the person in the hoodie. I didn't post that, but there's somebody in a hoodie. That absolutely came up at about 6:31 at 6:30.
Just standing there near the elevator.
Just really weird. But maybe we can find out who those people are. We already have some leads, and I will say to everybody, if you know anyone who was on that tier, or anyone who can give us information, please email justiceservedtv@gmail.com. We're going to get on this, and we're going to try to find out who those people were. Because if we find out who those people were, we're going to get a window into actually what happened that night.
Yeah, and we did have some comments after Mark's appearance yesterday from some insiders who have spent time in that area, that specific area that we're
Right.
talking about. So
Right.
we will continue. All right.
Good luck.
Well, good luck, Lisa.
I know.
We'll be calling you.
Well, it's been almost 7 years, and it's like I can't escape it. Not that I want to, but it's just keeps coming back. As what someone said, I'll leave you with this. In my position, he's the nightmare that never ends, but he's also the gift that keeps giving, because he's out there. And then I get these calls. I'm obviously, Liz is far more important. I said, Michael, I don't have much to offer. What do you want from me? But just, I think hearing experiences of, I speak mostly from a survivor perspective, I think. And I think it's so important that they're believed and represented and have a voice. And I think they found it very freeing when they did talk, but, anyway, it's just a story that I don't think is ever really ever going to end. We're never going to know everything, but I hope a couple of more people will end up in jail, because there are a lot that probably should be there.
It's sad. It's frustrating. It makes you so angry at everybody, and now just another layer of anger, for the government. So
Madeira Beach thinks the witnesses are probably dead. You mean like Chloe?
Yeah, they rehomed them.
Rehomed,
Yeah, that would be sad, but not surprising. So,
well,
all right then.
Out to any of the women who are not around anymore too. I want to shout out to Virginia for being so strong, because without Virginia Giuffre, who it just got to be too much for her, I think. Nothing would have happened without her, really. I know many survivors spoke out, but she started it all, did not back down, and her case really is why he's
exposed
gone.
him. She was a warrior.
Yep, she was a warrior.
All right. Well, thank you, Miss. Appreciate your
Lisa.
time.
I hope you'll come back. I hope this hasn't been such a traumatic experience being on with us.
Yeah,
all right. Well, you guys
that means we have to
have a good
dissolve the
night.
restraining order. So we'll have to.
All right, Michael, I'll meet you next door. We'll
Okay.
have a cocktail.
All righty.
Thanks, Joanna Goddess.
All right,
that was
then.
great. That was great listening to Lisa. What an insight.
So many stories that
she
she has to tell. She doesn't even think about them. There's just so many of these stories that she's lived, and getting so close to these survivors, and learning what they've gone through and telling their stories. And again, if you haven't seen the series, it speaks much better than I can about what this was all about. So I promote that.
Okay.
Even though Netflix blew it, clearly they blew it on that one soundbite that didn't believe a high school girl that there were 200 others in her high school that were similarly situated. Come on, man, come on. Sad. All right, partner. Tomorrow, let's see, quick promotion. Tomorrow we begin what we're going to do for the next few Fridays as we head into the Donna Adelson trial, set for jury selection August 19th in Tallahassee for the death of Dan Markel. We're going to bring up some important testimony from various witnesses that will kind of lay the foundation as we move toward the fourth trial in that case. And in all likelihood, the fourth conviction, I don't think it's a reach, but Donna Adelson as the mother pulling the strings should be fascinating. So that'll begin.
And that'll be
tomorrow.
6 o'clock tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So just go to our Justice Serve TV website page at 5 to 6, and at 6 o'clock it'll be there.
Yep. Oh, and one other programming note. Tomorrow at 10, we'll be launching for our members the latest edition of the Legal Edge, how-to helpful little nuggets of legal information that might be useful in your daily life. So we'll launch that tomorrow at 10. It'll go to the public Monday, but tomorrow it'll be for the members, because we love our members. And we love all our subs, but the members, they're making a little extra contribution to the cause, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Joel. All
Have
right,
a great
everyone.
weekend, everybody, because we'll see you tomorrow.
We'll see you
Oh, that's
tomorrow,
right.
but we still want to wish everyone a happy weekend, right? All right, I'm Linda Kenney Baden. Please hit that subscribe, like, share, and notify button here on YouTube, and on X, hit the follow at Justice Serve TV.
And I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing.
Riding flames, they charge with mine.